Hey guys, so the video you're about to watch was part of a collaboration I was going to do with a good friend and fellow YouTuber, Sandwich Entertainment. It was going to be a top 10 list of games inspired by Resident Evil, basically games that used elements found in a classic Resident Evil game like tank controls, static camera, things like that. And how we were going to present it was I would have a video with my top 5 and he would have a video with his, and it was going to be part of a Resident Evil month he does every year. Sadly, due to personal issues that I'm not going to talk about out of respect for him, he had to close his channel. So, because he's a great guy and a good friend and a really talented content creator, I'm going to go ahead and release my half of this video as sort of a tribute to his work and just to say, thanks man. So here's my top 5 games inspired by Resident Evil. Thank you and enjoy. Starting off the list are the sharp-dressed, shadowy agents that protect the Earth from the scum of the universe, the Men in Black. Developed by Gremlin Interactive and released in 1997 for the PC, which is how I originally played it, for this video we'll be looking at the PAL-exclusive PlayStation version that came out 1 year later, but both versions are basically identical. As far as story goes, MIB's plot loosely follows that of the first film. And by loosely, I mean you start off the game as Will Smith's character Jay, pre-MIB, chasing an alien through New York while avoiding mobsters? Anyway, after you defeat the alien on the rooftop, Agent K comes in and neuralizes you, then you become an agent. From there, the story goes into a different direction with the MIB trying to stop an evil alien from destroying the... Okay, so it's not all that different. When it comes to gameplay, the inspiration from Resident Evil is so blatantly obvious it hurts. Static cameras, tank controls, puzzles to solve, the usual. But what makes no sense is how you fight in this game. With guns you hold circle to aim, left and right to turn, and up to fire? It gets stranger with melee combat as well. You again hold circle to go into a fighting stance and press left and right to punch and up to kick. Okay. You can choose which agent you want to play as after the New York stage, each with their own strengths. K, the all-around agent. L, the coroner from the first film who became an agent. Well, she's good with melee. And J, who's, well, he's Will Smith. And of course, those wonderful guns and gadgets of theirs is here as well, including that adorable noisy cricket. Visually, MIB is pretty basic. The stages are alright for pre-rendered backgrounds and are varied enough to not feel bland and repetitive. The characters, both human and alien, are decent enough for the time, but the cutscenes are the static animated type, kind of like a bad motion comic, making it look cheap and hokey. Audio-wise, there isn't that much music in the game, and when it shows up, it's quite forgettable. Meanwhile, the voice acting straddles that fine line between funny bad and god-awful. Despite its odd fumbles here and there, MIB isn't that bad of a game. It's certainly better than most MIB games out there. This one, though, deserves to not be neuralized from the gaming world. Moving from a game based on a familiar film, we now come to a game based on a not-so-familiar film, 1997's The City of Lost Children. Based on the French film of the same name, this PlayStation and PC title, developed by Psygnosis, has you playing as Miette, a young thief who assists a carnival strongman named One in saving his adopted brother who has been kidnapped by Crank, a crazy scientist who's been kidnapping children to harvest their dreams as he's incapable of dreaming himself. Yeah, it's a crazy story, but also fascinating at the same time. What's interesting is that instead of just borrowing elements from the film for the game, both the game and the film follow each other to the T, similar to another one of Capcom's classic horrors, Sweet Home. Speaking of the gameplay, at first glance, City of Lost Children looks like a Resident Evil copycat, with the pre-rendered backgrounds and camera, but that's where the inspiration ends, as City is an adventure puzzle game, As Miette, you'll collect items to give to NPCs in order to progress through the story, and even have to do a little bit of stealth. Nothing too exciting, at least compared to other games in the genre. Sadly, unlike its PC counterpart, the controls on the PlayStation aren't as responsive, causing you to bump into almost everything. Then again, this was early in the console's life, so I can't fault it too much. Also, death is not a problem, as you never die in this game. Instead, when you get captured, you get thrown in either a cellar or a warehouse, but you can easily escape and resume your game. Graphic-wise, this game has not aged well. The pre-rendered backgrounds are alright enough, but the character models are just jaggy as hell, even for the time. Even the cutscenes are bad. Now audio, on the other hand, fares a little better. The music is well done and fits the mood of the game. The acting's pretty good too, although it's a little jarring. Most everyone in the game has a British accent, yet it's based on a French film. No big deal.
Wait, kid. I'm not doing you any harm. Where are you?
Overall, The City of Lost Children might be a stretch to be a game inspired by Resident Evil, but it's surprisingly not all that bad. Still, I'd recommend the film over this game any day. At number 3 is a game that answers the question, what do you get when you mix Resident Evil with psychics? You get Galarians. Developed by Polygon Magic and published by Crave and ASCII, this 2000 PlayStation release tells the story of Rion, a young man suffering from amnesia who wakes up in a hospital and just now happens to have psychic powers. When he hears the telepathic message of a girl named Lilia, Rion must find her so they can stop a plan so evil the fate of humanity is at stake. So yeah, this isn't what you would expect from a Resident Evil style game. You know, zombies, viruses and the like, but that's good. It's nice to have a different take on the formula. Granted, you still fight crazy looking creatures, but that's beside the point. Playing through Galarians, you'll guide Rion through a few different areas, collect items and keys, solve a few puzzles, and take out an assortment of goons and experiments, pretty much checking off everything on the survival horror checklist. But where Galarians differs than its biohazard brother-in-law is the aforementioned psychic abilities. Rion learns a few new tricks like psychic blasts, pyrokinesis, and telekinesis to name a few, that must be recharged by using vials via an injector, kinda like ammo. But be cautious, as enemies drop nothing when they die, so conserve vials and healing pills as best you can. Also, next to your health and vial meters is the AP or anger points meter, which slowly fills if you're under attack, use your abilities, or are under stress. When it gets full, you go into a short, causing you to walk slowly and bursting the head of anyone who comes close. However, your HP drains as you're shorting, so you must take an AP recovery pill to lower it or it's game over. Honestly, Galarians plays pretty well, better than most RE-inspired games. Hell, it even has an auto-run button which comes in handy if you have to dash in one direction and don't need a turn. The only annoying bit is that Rion turns a bit slower than most characters in survival horror games, which can screw you over in combat. Other than that, not too shabby. Visually, the game looks pretty good. The backgrounds are drawn nicely with some good detail thrown in, while the characters range from looking pretty cool to goofy. With audio, the music has an ominous and futuristic tone which totally goes with the game. And voiceover? Well, it's what you'd expect from this era of games. Well, survival horror games anyway.
Rion! Who are you?
They're coming. They're coming to get me.
Why are you calling me?
I'm scared.
I've never heard of such a quick dosage cycle.
Me too. I'm afraid it may have destroyed the patient's memory. I'm surprised he's even still alive.
Galarians was successful enough that it got an anime as well as a sequel on PlayStation 2 called Galarians Ash, but sadly that's as far as the series went. Still, if you're in the mood to fight monsters with your mind, give Galarians a go. You won't be disappointed. Capcom released Onimusha for the PlayStation 2 in 2001, putting a samurai-themed spin on the Resident Evil formula. It was refreshing, wild, and fun. So it's kind of funny when you find out that Konami beat them to the punch a few years prior with the 1999 PlayStation 1 exclusive Soul of the Samurai, or Ronin Blade in Europe. The game's plot is simple, but nice. There's an evil plot afoot involving infecting the people of Japan with insect-like creatures called soul bugs, so that a tyrannical lord can rule over the land, and only 2 warriors can stop it. Kotaro, a Ronin, and Lin, a female ninja. Like I said, basic, but nice. At first glance, Soul of the Samurai looks very identical to Capcom's katana-wielding adventure. Well, I mean, yeah, it's on this list. But Soul does a few things differently. First, you have 2 characters to choose from, Kotaro and Lin, each with their own storylines to follow that intertwine with each other at certain points, a la Threads of Fate. Next is combat. While there is only one button for attacking, you can press it in tandem with a direction on the D-pad or analog stick to perform combos and special moves, with each character having a unique set. What weapon you're using also factors in the speed and strength of your attacks as well, with quite a few to obtain. Other than that, it's the same old fare, run through the areas and hack up enemies to progress the story. Funny enough, there aren't really any puzzles to solve in this game, which is quite refreshing. Something else borrowed from Threads of Fate is that in order to get the true ending, you must complete both characters' campaigns. Yeah, it may not be the best way to extend the life of a game, but there are methods that are much worse. For visuals, the backgrounds aren't bad and do a decent job of capturing the look of feudal Japan. The characters, while no means terrible, seem to not have as much polish as some PlayStation games at the time. Then again, this game came out 16 years ago, so it's nothing to lose sleep over. For audio, the music's fine, but its techno mixed with classic Japanese instrument sound reminds me of a Super Nintendo soundtrack, and I'm not sure why. As for voiceover, there is none, save for grunts and screams, but at least the dialogue is alright. Soul of the Samurai may be a 100% Resident Evil inspired game, and it's certainly not better than Onimusha, but it's still a fun action romp worth picking up. Now I know for this list, I've mostly gone with PlayStation games, only because there's a ton of them on that system that I remember playing. But for the number 1 spot, I've chosen a game with RE inspiration from the most unlikely of characters. ...2001 Scooby-Doo Classic Creep Capers for the Nintendo 64. Now I know what you're thinking. Popka, are you off your meds or something? Well, maybe, but that's besides the point. I too had the same thought you did when I saw this game in my local video store so many years ago, but there wasn't anything else good to rent at the time, so I gave it a try and was surprised by what I saw. Developed by Terraglyph Studios and published by the late THQ, Scooby-Doo C3 has the gang solving 4 mysteries, split into chapters like the show. You play as Shaggy with Scooby following close by, exploring the area looking for clues as well as parts to give to the gang to make traps to catch the culprit. You can even find items to use as a disguise to hide away from the enemy. Now obviously Shaggy isn't blasting away with a gun, so how do you defend yourself? By hiding like a coward. Well, it is Shaggy and Scooby. But don't worry, if your life bar is depleted, either from the ghosts or the environment, it's not game over. You just run off to the room before your health runs out. You can also replenish health by eating Scooby snacks or by visiting the kitchen and playing a sandwich making minigame. As far as controls go, it's what you'd expect from a game with tank controls, but it doesn't work so well on N64. Well, the analog stick anyway. The D-pad works okay enough. Other than that, this is basically Resident Evil for kids. Visually speaking, C3 is a mixed bag. The levels look pretty good, representing locales that you would see on the cartoon, and the characters are about as faithful as they can be on the N64. But you know, for how Shaggy eats, man, he's got some stringy arms. Audio-wise, the music sounds like it came from the cartoon, having that goofy yet spooky sound. There are some voice clips in the game, mostly from Shaggy and Scooby, but it's nothing you need to pay attention to. Am I saying that Scooby-Doo Classic Creep Capers is a game worth playing? Nope. It's way too easy for veteran survival horror players and gets boring fast. But it's on this list for a different reason. It's a Scooby-Doo game that plays like Resident Evil. The idea alone is insane, but somehow works, and that's why it's earned the top spot on this list.